facing off against Nyria with Warrior, Rogue, and Druid. So Mage is going to be for RDU and Warrior is going to be for Nyria. And just off, straight away, this is a matchup that I initially thought was really bad for Warrior. Just kind of given the way that the cards line up. And I think with a hand that like RDU has, I think it's still pretty bad for Warrior. But overall, if you don't see Snowchugger and Piloted Treader being drawn, these minions are pretty much the most resilient ones and the ones that have the most shutout potential early in the game as far as the Mage is concerned against Warrior. How do you think this matchup is going to end up lining up generally and with these specific draws afterwards?
Generally, Warrior can deal fairly well with a lot of the early Mech Mage threats, like a lot of the 2/3s that Mech Mage tends to have, the Snowchuggers and the Mech Warpers. But the Snowchuggers, not only the Snowchuggers, but Snowchuggers and the Neurotrons can really deal effectively with a lot of weapons that the Warrior can bring to the field as well. So those are definitely going to have a lot of effect. With these particular hands, Deathbite might be slightly shut out if we don't see a Silence come onto the field immediately. And Nyria might have some trouble because he won't have a turn 3 or turn 4 play that's very effective against the board.
Yeah. I really like playing Armorsmith here, but I actually wouldn't mind seeing something like Iron Begal. He didn't see a 1-drop, so I think he can anticipate RDU not having one. And if he chose the Iron Begal, the Snowchugger, he would have gotten that effect out of the way in terms of freezing, so his weapons wouldn't be shut off. And at the same time, he also wouldn't have to worry about it really getting pinged and then development facing behind that. Because if RDU is going to choose to use the ping, it means he's not actually putting anything on the board. We saw he drew Cogmaster. That would have ended up helping things out. But I also really like the Armorsmith because of the way it's going to go in conjunction with Cruel Taskmaster. So if this Cruel Taskmaster hits the board here, he's going to be able to actually put this into the Snowchugger, and he's kind of getting the exact same effect he had last turn. So really 2 opportunities to make this happen. Once this goes into the Snowchugger, we still have a point of damage that's pretty much committed to being put into this Armorsmith to keep it from going crazy.
Yeah, not only, this is such a great start from Nyria. He draws a lot of his low curve minions. Not only does he clear the Snowchugger leading up to a Deathbite for next turn, he's able to silence the Mad Scientist, so he guarantees no Mirror Image will come out in the following turn. So just a couple of more minions coming down on the board, but we're almost definitely going to be seeing a Deathbite right now coming down to the board as well. Deathbite will be able to clear a lot of the minions on RDU's side of the board, and it'll even threaten any minions that RDU can play in the next turn. Deathbite in this matchup is usually a 2-for-1 if it doesn't get shut out by something like the Neutron or the Snowchugger. And I think this is one of the circumstances where that exactly will happen.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you too. I think it's a really important thing to note is how much Deathbite ends up getting in this matchup.
Yeah, Deathbite will almost certainly come down on the Piloted Treader, I would say. There's just so many good trades from Nyria's side of the board as well. His 2-1 and his 2-2 can trade into his opponent's 3-2 and 2-2. But also, if he actually kills the Piloted Treader with the Deathbite, then the Cogmaster will actually be able to. Will be actually traded into the resulting 1-2 Cogmaster. But actually, unfortunately, I think we have Nyria might have some internet issues because his camera is frozen. We actually saw him log offline.
Yeah, disconnect this early. I don't know exactly what the official rules for this are. His hand is looking pretty good though. Something else to note too is the minions that could be summoned off this Piloted Treader, and what that would really mean for the trades that resulted. Something like Explosive Sheep or Doomsayer came out. It's just, that is like worst case scenario for RDU, I think. So yeah, this is definitely going to be a disconnect. So we're going to find out exactly how we're going to be moving forward for this one. Monk and I unfortunately do not make decisions when it comes to disconnects. So we're just the messengers for this one. So don't shoot us.
Yeah, don't shoot the messengers indeed. And yeah, it's really unfortunate for Nyria because it looks like he was in like an absurdly favorable position at this point, but at the worst case scenario, he's going to lose this game, or he might just have to force a regame. We're not really sure right now. We're just checking how the players are doing, if Nyria is back online right now.
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and wait for that to happen. That was a complete disconnect from Nyria, so we're gonna have to kind of wait and see what ends up happening. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think that Nyria is actually a pretty significant favorite coming into that, because not only did he have Deathbite, but he had a strong follow-up with the Sludge Belcher afterwards. And then he also had mechanics to make sure that his life is topped off with the shield block, and that's not accounting for any of the draws he had, which when Warrior stabilizes its board position, pretty much all of its draws are really scary. It's when Warrior is fighting from behind that its draws do not have the most impact possible. When it's kind of going toe-to-toe and it's not taking 1 billion damage in the process of doing it, it's one of the scariest decks that's out there.
Yeah, and not only with the Sludge Belcher and with the Death Spite, the other issue for RDU is that he was not really able to activate the Goblin Blast Mage in the coming turns because he really wasn't probably not going to have any mechs on the field after Death Spite came down. So Goblin Blast Mage, basically essentially what you want on turns 4 and 5 to get back to the board, one of the strongest Mech Mage cards, but RDU probably wasn't going to be able to utilize it in the upcoming turns.
I want to take this time to remind everyone out there that we're going to have a different start time from tomorrow. We started a little bit earlier today. It was 1600 CETs when we started. Tomorrow we're actually starting at 1700 CET. And for those of you who are out there who are too lazy to Google what time zone that means for you, I'll give you a couple more. That's 1600 GMT, that's 1100 EST, and 800 PST. So,
or just 8 PST.
Yeah. Is it 8 or is it 800? I don't really know how it works.
Just 8 PST, I would say.
8 PST?
Yeah, 8 a.m. PST.
Yeah, see, I don't want to have to specify between PM and AM. I like military time. Military time is very efficient. It feels like it's about as close to metric time as you can get. Like, I don't like measuring things in inches and ounces. You know, this weird archaic system that the United States chooses to use. I like centimeters and I like kilowatts and all that good stuff.
Admiral, I'm so disappointed in you. I thought you were a real Texan, a real American.
You know, I really am, but there's just something to be said about efficiency. You know, my entire life has been dedicated to basically playing games and dismantling them and figuring out how things work the best. And if the game I'm playing is life and the element I have in front of me is metric system or this archaic, terrible system that doesn't really have a reasonable standard of measure other than we made these up and this is what they are, I want to go to the one that makes sense that everyone can understand.
We're actually getting some admin ruling right now. It's actually going to be a 1-0 lead for RDU right now. Naria, unfortunately, he disconnected from the game, so he actually loses the first game, even though he was, I would argue, in a fairly favorable position.
Yeah, that's not to say that RDU was out of it, but that's just the way it has to be with rules in these online tournaments. Disconnects usually have to result in losses just to keep things clean and keep things moving forward. That's the nature of the beast. So RDU Mech Mage going to be locked for this one. This is the Conquest format for those of you just joining us or for those of you who don't quite pay enough attention to catch it every single time that Monk and I say it and have been tuning in for a while. Conquest is the format where when you win with a deck, that deck becomes locked. It's not like last Euro Standing where when you lose with a deck, it becomes locked. So to win a match, you actually have to win with every deck that you've submitted in a best of 5. So these are 3 decks, best of 5. 1 game must be one with each one. The losing player doesn't have their deck locked, and they can use any of their unlocked decks in a new game at any time they wish.
So Naria will still be able to use his Warrior, but RDU will not actually be able to use his Mech Mage. He'll still have his remaining 2 decks to face off against the Warrior, and let's actually talk a bit about RDU's lineup. In the previous set, we actually mentioned that RDU was one of the rare players who wasn't bringing the Druid to the tournament, and it might be because he wanted to temper his lineup against aggro decks, but now that he's matching up against Naria's Warrior, he might be regretting the decision to not bring Druid into his lineup.
I definitely think it's something he's going to take into consideration, but I think when you look at a field overall, you don't really expect Warrior to be played too much, given how much Druid is actually finding its way through a lot of these tournament plays. I mean, Druid was it was the second most popular deck that was in this tournament. You compiled the stats earlier.
Druid is actually the most popular deck in the tournament.
Oh, it's most.
Well, it's 12 out of 16 players are bringing Druid. The second most popular deck, of course, is going to be Rogue with 11 players playing Rogue.
Yeah, and then 7 are playing Mage behind that. There's actually only 4 people that brought Warrior, and I'm not going to say I'm surprised that 4 people brought Warrior, but I would consider it sort of the lower tier of power decks right now. So if you're looking to exploit certain kinds of players, I think Warrior's a really good way to do that. And against someone like RDU who's going to go to the next level and think on that sort of thing, this is the kind of player that you're trying to punish, is one of these fantastic guys who's always going the extra mile to try to get an edge in his lineup. So I think Warrior does function really well versus what RDU's doing, but overall I think Warrior's kind of a risky choice.
Yeah, we're getting word that Naria is going to just figure out some things right now, and Naria will actually be back in 5 minutes. And we'll continue the match in 5 minutes, but so I guess let's try to fill some more time, right, Admirable?
That's generally the way it goes. So, Rogue and Hunter is left. Do you think Nyria is just going to queue up Warrior again here and hope to get some good matchups? Because you've been saying, and a lot of people have been saying this, they think Warrior is actually really good against Rogue. I still am going to disagree with it, and I may be wrong on this one, and I've definitely been wrong before, so it's not going to be a surprise to anybody. But I feel like Rogue still puts up a good argument against Warrior. I wouldn't consider it like, oh, well, Warrior versus Rogue, that's definitely the matchup I want.
I think it's a lot about how confident Nyria is with all his decks. Now, Druid is always a good deck that everyone is confident with, but the remaining decks in Nyria's lineup, Warrior and Rogue, they're both decks that Nyria has done very well with recently on ladder. With both of the decks, he's actually gotten top 5 on the EU ladder in the past few weeks. So definitely decks that he's confident with no matter what his opponent is playing.
There's definitely a certain respect to be said for that. You know, if you're playing a deck and you're winning a lot with it, you should keep playing that deck, even if it's not considered one of the strongest strategies. We saw Life Coach bring Handlock to this tournament, and Handlock for the last couple of weeks and on top of the ladder, it's been all but extinct. Most every single Warlock player has kind of adapted to a Demon Lock style, and it's kind of, you know, tipping the hat to, or the fedora, if you will, to Big Game Hunter being in so many different decks to make sure that they can check Dr. Boom to keep it from getting out of control. So when you're seeing that, you really don't want to be in a position where you're facing Mountain Giant into potential Big Game Hunters very often, and sometimes even 2 Big Game Hunters.
Yes. Well, speaking of big game, we've actually raised $1,863 for Child's Play just today, between today and yesterday alone. So we're getting awfully close to our goal of $2,000 that I set for the day, and we've got 2 matches left. So I'm sure. Well, just as I said, the prize has increased to $1,888. So almost just $100 away from that goal.
Just barely anything left. You guys have been doing an awesome job. We want to take this time to thank you all as well for your contributions. It means a lot to the kids out there that are going to be benefiting from this. It is a benefit for Child's Play. For those of you just joining us, Child's Play is an organization that helps provide toys and games for children in hospitals who don't otherwise have access to them. If you want to learn more about Child's Play, you can visit childsplaycharity.org, and we strongly encourage you to make contributions, which you can do so following links in the chat or links below the stream.
Yeah, we also want to give a shout out to Kingwin, who's the organization that's hosting this tournament right now. Thanks, Kingwin. You've brought us some great entertainment, and of course, you can thank them by visiting some of the links below on the screen here and checking out all the sales on games they've had over the past few weeks.
Yeah, good stuff. What a great lineup this has been so far. The favorite match of the day still for me is Savitz versus Tice. I think that's actually a match that I'm going to remember for as long as I'm playing Hearthstone.
Yeah, Savitz versus Kolento, obviously a very great match just because of the level of players that was in that match. And also, I hate to talk about another Team Liquid player again, but Nyria and StriveCro was another match that I was really excited about and had some really close games. It was kind of the opposite of the Tice versus Savitz match, where StriveCro was in such a huge lead with the Mech Mage versus Druid game, but then he just couldn't draw into the finishers, and Nyria was actually able to close it out after so many turns of StriveCro drawing dead.
Yeah, Savitz was able to draw it, and again, StriveCro had so many draws for so many turns that he could have picked up. Like if he had gotten a Fireball or a Frostbolt, he had, again, it was like 4 or 5 turns to draw 1 of 3 outs, I think, that were left, which is a pretty high percentage chance when you take that many draws into account. He just wasn't able to find one. Savitz was able to find one, so we've seen both sides of that matchup where it's been really close, and Druid came back, and it's been really close, and then Mage was able to close it out. So another big treat for that tournament. Or sorry, for this tournament that we've seen so far.
All right,
Yeah.
So I think the games are pretty close to beginnings. Nyria is still having some problems with his webcam, so even though the games might start fairly soon, we won't be seeing Nyria's pretty face.
That's a shame. I like Nyria. I met him at DreamHack Winter. It was we discussed a very long, in-depth strategy turn over the difference between playing a weapon or playing a minion. I actually remembered what it was now. And we were talking about the range of different things that happens and how a game pans out based on like this 1 extra point of damage. I was getting down and what it meant for the entire game. It was like a 30-minute discussion, quite literally, from like a turn 2 play, I think it was. I was just like, my head's exploding.
Yeah. Unfortunately, again, this game is played on the internet, so if the internet has problems, then there's going to be a few delays. We're very sorry about that, but hopefully the games will start very soon.
You know, a wise man once told me that technology was the vehicle of esports,
Mhm.
and that sometimes that vehicle stalls.
Yes, I was kind of hinting towards that, but you hit the nail right on the right on the head there.
Gosh, I love Tasteless. He's one of my favorite people.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
actually hit legend recently.
Yeah, he's been playing a lot of Hearthstone. When he first started playing Hearthstone, I have to admit, he was just absolutely terrible. I had no idea what he was doing. Like, if you watched him put together a combination of cards, he'd be like, okay, and I have no idea what to do. I'm like, all right, well, let's start going through some options and figure this out. And it was really ugly at first, but he's gotten a lot better. And sort of the preparation for that is really not so much of his ability to navigate through Hearthstone, but more so just the practice he's put in and his understanding of matchups and how they function.
Yeah, I think he's actually asked a lot for a lot of help, and it just shows you how much he wants to become legend. He's put in a lot of work, and he's finally reached it, so congrats to him. But on another note, the games are about to begin.
Yeah, buddy. So 1-0 lead for RDU right now, and Iria is going to queue up Warrior again, and RDU is going to go with Hunter straight away, and I believe this is more of a mid-range Hunter version, if I recall correctly.